Hello and welcome to the Bestseller Experiment, where we continue to discover what makes a bestseller and inspire you to start, finish and publish your book. I'm Mark DeVoe.
And I am Mark Stay. And a huge thank you, as always, to our patrons over on Patreon and our academates on the Academy. If you want to find out what the Academy is about, go to academy.bestsellerexperiment.com. It's all there. Make your writing goals come true. Make them a reality. And you can have us as your coaches as an added bonus. It's all to play for. Mr. D, how are you this week, sir?
I'm doing great. I'm actually really tired. But that probably has something to do with the fact that I had a son turn 18 on Friday and a daughter turn 13 on Monday. If that isn't cause for tiredness, I don't know what is. I don't know why. What is it about kids like having such close birthdays and so close after Christmas as well? Absolute nightmare for presents. But
it really is, yeah.
My son, I'll shout out to Luke, my son. He is the biggest Survivor like nut, Survivor, the TV show.
Right, yeah.
He absolutely, he loves it. He loves it. It actually all started a few years ago when we sat down and we watched the Bear Grylls reality TV show about all these celebs going on an island, and we got into it. But then Luke discovered Survivor, and he now runs his own Survivor games at school. He runs a club with hundreds of students. Yeah, it's brilliant.
Fantastic.
But for his 18th birthday, he said, Dad, you know what I'd really like to do? I'd love to have a load of friends over and play Survivor, like a short 3-hour version. So we had 5 hours. Well, it was 5 hours in the end with challenges, and they were doing all crazy stuff. It was brilliant. Best laugh we've had in ages. But man, I'm knackered. I tell you, back in the day, I would have just all these 18-year-olds were full of energy, running around, sprinting up and down the garden and doing crazy challenges. But just watching them, I was...
Yeah, it's exhausting.
It is exhausting, but it was good fun. But big milestones, like a teenager and an adult, all in 4 days. That's a lot to take in as a dad. But
be drawing your pension soon, Mr.
I
D.
will be drawing my pension. Absolutely. Looking forward to those bus rides. There's got to be a book of someone who will turn 65 or however old we're going to have to be now, 97 to retire. I think it's going to be
exactly,
time,
103.
But by the time we get to being centurions and we get our free bus pass, I bet you there's a book that someone's written about someone that gets their free bus pass and just gets on a bus and goes. Just there must be a book, because I know that
I think there is actually.
Yeah.
I think there is. It's someone who's done the whole of the UK on their bus pass. Yeah,
I think so because I read
such a bell.
I read this great story about Harold Fry, and it was about a guy that retired, and then he just decided to deliver a card to a friend that was actually was dying of cancer, but he went to post the card, but decided, you know what, I'll just walk to the next post box. It was a bit Forrest Gumpish, but he ends up walking from the south of England up to the north of Scotland or something. And and then I thought, well, you probably want to do that on a bus if you had the choice, really. So,
exactly.
Yeah.
Comfy seat.
And how are you doing, sir? How's your week been?
Oh, roller coaster week. So there's a there's a project that film project that I thought was a dead cert. Things were about to be signed, and now it's on very, very thin ice. And it involves us writing a letter to someone in one of the biggest pop bands ever in the world of pop. So there's that. Sorry to be vague about this, but years from now, I might be able to tell you what this is all about. And then the flip side of that, funding for a movie has come in this week. So it looks like we might be shooting something later this year, which is very exciting. But again, nothing's confirmed, nothing's signed. It's all a bit, and then I have to be very, very careful with this one. But an idea, I came up with an idea for a TV show 4 or 5 years ago, and it took me about a year to knock it into shape, to put together a pitch deck for a TV show, which was about 23 pages long. I figured out the whole thing, and I sold it. I company optioned it, and it's gone through various development stages. Now, they started shooting this Monday, but I'm not working on it. I'm a script consultant, but I'm not writing on it. for various reasons. And again, I'll talk about this further down the line. But basically, it's like I'm standing on the shore and they're on a boat heading towards the horizon. And I'm saying, bon voyage. And they're going, we'll send you a check. which funny, I've just arrived just before we started recording. So,
fantastic.
So yeah, it's been a weird old week.
Wow.
But so yeah. And
well,
I'm sorry to be vague, but
yeah, I'm not going to delve anymore. But all I will say is I'm very much looking forward to talking about this as and when the time is right, folks.
Yeah. Hopefully in the next year, maybe, so hopefully sooner.
Which is Morse code for don't miss an episode of the bestseller experiment.
Exactly,
Basically. Yeah, brilliant stuff. Well, that's exciting. What the life, I mean, ups and downs. Do you know what, though? One thing, we've said this many times, but it's always good to have a few irons in the fire, isn't it? Because
it is.
There's a great example this week.
In our previous episode, we were talking about, how long have people had projects in development? So the Witches of Woodville, I've gone back and I found the first notes of what became, and it had a different title then. It was, the premise was still the same, but a lot has changed. I found the first notes of what became Woodville in emails from 2008. So that's how long ago that took, about 12 years of development to arrive. So persistence counts for so much in this game. Really does.
One of the things we talked about actually in the Academy, and we mentioned it last week on the show, was about this kind of having multiple projects that people are working on. But there's absolutely relevance to having multiple projects out there.
Yeah.
Doing things like trying to get signed or deals be done, have as many of those as you want out there, because if they all come in at the same time, fantastic, but at least if you've only got one that's out there working on your behalf, then the odds are fairly tight, aren't they? I mean, it's basically an all or nothing, and they talk about eggs and baskets. So the more I think of it as we kind of like as we delve deep into this kind of incredible but bonkers world of publishing and film and TV and all the rest of it, I think that you just keep working hard on everything and get everything finished and get it out there. It doesn't mean that everything's going to happen straight away, but as you've proven, Mark, over time things can start happening, and it's great if things, what a great week in some ways. Okay, there's something that's possibly fallen off a cliff, but something else really good's happened. So
yeah,
right.
Yeah, so it's all the fun of the fair,
It is absolutely.
I had a coffee with a TV director friend a couple of days ago, and he was saying exactly the same thing. It's this idea that you just have to keep, as soon as you finish one thing, you start putting it out there, but then you start work on the next thing straight away. Because if you sit there, first of all, waiting for the phone to ring or the email to ping or whatever, it's a short road to insanity, frankly, and disappointment. Whereas if you're working, and again, we've been saying this in recent episodes, if you're happy in the moment, if you're happy in that moment when you're working and writing and creating things and creating worlds and characters, then you're going to be, you are going to be happy. So, it's just been such a cluster of this week of weird stuff. It's just been so crazy.
Well, it's like when the stars align or the universe is, or in the case of Elon Musk, meteorites smack your satellites out of the sky. I mean, you just don't know. But there's a concept in sales and marketing called pipelines, and I kind of think of that when I think of authors now. It's like this idea that everything has a process from start to finish. So writing a book has a pipeline. When you start writing a book, you finish your book, you get it edited, you try and find a publisher, you get it, and eventually it gets out there. And there's all these different stages, and it's super important that a pipeline always have different stages. So you want things happening in different stages if you can, but you want to always be moving something down the pipeline ultimately. But if you've just got that one thing, it's going to make it a lot harder. So so get those books finished, folks, and get them out there. That's the message today and every week on the bestseller experiment. I mean, it's like, but it's true though. It's true.
Absolutely.
It's absolutely. Now, Mr. Stay, lots to talk about. But before we dive into our special guest, I just want to tease people. We want to, if people have been following the media this last week, there was an incredible story about a young 8-year-old and his book and his local library. And if you haven't heard the story, we're going to be talking about it after. Mark hasn't heard this, so I'm going to like mention it later. But after we've done our interview, we're going to have a quick chat about that because it's an absolute brilliant. It's one of my favourite stories of last year. So a little teaser. Okay. But Mark, let's talk about our incredible guest this podcast show.
Yes, well, long-time listeners of the podcast will be familiar with a very regular guest called Rhoda Baxter, who's been on the podcast many, many times, but her real name is Jeevani Charika, and she's British Sri Lankan. And as Jeevani, she's written books like Christmas at the Palace, This Stolen Life, and A Convenient Marriage, which was an RNA Awards nominee. And her new novel, Playing for Love, is set in the world of gaming. And we discuss all kinds of stuff, talk about romance, particularly expectations from romance readers and what Jeeve calls the R factor, what writers can learn from gaming, which is really cool, and what publishers are looking for in 2022.
Fantastic. Well, let's dive in and have a listen to Mark speaking to the lovely Jeevani Charika.
Jeevani, welcome back to the Bestseller Experiment. How are you today?
I'm fine, thank you, Mark. Thank you for having me back.
Well, I think you might hold the record for the greatest number of return visits, actually. And folks, I'll put the links to all the episodes, a number of which are deep dives, because we first met at the RNA, yes. And then you very kindly did some deep dives. There was one on writing romantic comedy, which you did with Jane Lovering, which is a laugh. Then we did The Business of Being an Author, which covered your book, which is a fantastic book. And then we did one called Getting Publishers Just the Beginning as well. So it's you've almost been on the show almost as much as me and Mr. D. So but you've always been there. I think as Rhoda Baxter. So yes. Before we get on to talking about your new Jeevani book, Playing for Love, tell us about Rhoda. Tell us about Jeeve. Tell us about yourself.
Okay, so I wrote a book years and years ago, my first book, which was about Sri Lankan people, and it was a straightforward women's fiction book. They just happened to be Sri Lankan people. Couldn't find a place for it. It went through the RNA. I got the writer scheme, and I got some feedback. And the person reviewing said, "You know what? You have a comedy voice, waiting, just crying to get out. Why didn't you just write something for fun, right?" So at this point, I was like, "Yeah, okay, why not?" And so I wrote this rom-com with white people, and it was just so much fun, right? It was no effort at all, almost compared to 3.5 years of writing the first book. And then I had a baby, and then pretty soon after that, I got a publication offer from a digital-first publisher. And they said, "Oh, will you be using the pen name?" And I thought, okay. So I'm a microbiologist by training, and I did my PhD on a bacterium called Rhoda Baxter. So I thought, I know, I'll call myself Rhoda Baxter. Because, it's the sort of conversation you have in the pub, isn't it? Oh, when I write a book, I'm going to call myself Rhoda Baxter. Anyway, publisher said, "Oh, yes, that's much easier to spell." And so that I became Rhoda. And I've been Rhoda since 2011, so 10 years plus now.
Crikey, yes. Wow.
Yeah. So, But obviously my real name's Jeevani. So I stopped writing the South Asian books and sort of wrote a few more books, got published by a different publisher. And then, and I had written a second book, which had Sri Lankan characters in because I was just driven to write these stories. And that was the one that got me an agent with Federica Leonardis, who I submitted to after hearing her on your podcast.
Hey.
Yeah. And that did the rounds a bit. And we had 3 offers on that book, but none of them were from white editors. And it ended up at Hero Books with Kesh. And then by this time, the book had been rewritten a few times, but it was the first book I wrote, but it was my, 5th, 6th publication, traditional publication. And so, so that was always going to be published as Jeevani. In my mind, that was going to be the name that I was going to go with. But then I got asked to write Christmas at the Palace, which was a bit of a crazy dash in time for Harry and Meghan's wedding. So it was that whole royal wedding bubble thing that happened.
Yeah.
And because it was about a woman of color, the publishers said, could we use your real name? So I became Jeevani as well. So it's a bit strange at the moment. I'm more Jeevani books, but Rhoda is like more established name, and on Twitter I'm Rhoda Baxter. So
yeah, because Rhoda has 14 novels, novellas from just counting, and then 2 non-fiction books. As I said, How to Write Romantic Comedy with Jane Lovering, and then Getting Published is just the beginning, which is all about IP rights and contracts. Which, if you're about to get published, get this book. Get this book. It covers everything. It's also quite UK focused as well, which is very unusual for this kind of thing. This is an essential book, people. But let's put that aside. Tell us about Playing for Love, which absolutely fascinates me because it's set in the world of online gaming.
Okay, so normally when people say what inspired your book, you've got to think, because it was like 1,000 little things that fed into it. But this one, quite a few years ago now, when my daughter was in primary school, she got into a program called Miraculous Ladybug and Cat Noir, right? which is a fetch cartoon about these 2 superheroes called Miraculous Ladybug and Cat Noir and their real life identities. And she's in love with him in one and he's in love with her with the other. There's this love square and it's just lovely, right? So my daughter grew out of it, stopped watching it. I carried on watching it. And I kept thinking, I'd love to write something like this. I don't write superhero books yet. You never know. And I love the whole secret identity thing because, Spider-Man, Clark Kent, and Superman, that whole thing is quite big. And so I thought, how could I do it? And I thought the only way I could think of to make it contemporary was to have an online identity that was secret or an online identity that was public with a secret real life. And so that's where the whole idea came from. So in Playing for Love, Samadhi Sam is a fashion entrepreneur who is an amateur gamer, dabbles secretly in the evenings to de-stress. And Luke is this blogger, YouTube blogger, who's been doing it for years, and he's got this whole persona called Blaze, who was very, very different to him in real life. And Luke in real life is very shy, and he's got a massive crush on Sam. And Sam in real life has a massive crush on this YouTube gamer called Blaze. That's what the story is about.
It's terrific because it's about online gaming, and we have this assumption of gamers. We tend to think of mainly men who live in their parents' basements, who are hunched over a screen or whatever. But we're all gamers now. I mean, I was looking at some of the reviews, and one said, "Oh, I'm not a gamer unless you count an unhealthy addiction to Mario Kart." Yes, you're a gamer. Yes. Another reviewer said, "I'm not into gaming except Animal Crossing." Guess what? It's a game. I mean, my daughter's well into Animal Crossing. And folks, if you don't know, this is basically like a town where you live and all these little animals, and you build a house and you go around collecting things and buying and selling things. It's essentially like the real world, but with little, raccoons and things. And the other day she lost tracks of the day of the week. And I remember she said, "Oh, it must be Sunday because you can only get turnips from the market on Sunday on Animal Crossing." I mean, this is, we're all gamers now. We might not be YouTube gamers like Luke, but this is something we're all into now, and I think that's it's so often gaming is part of a science fiction genre, and usually something goes wrong, you get sucked into the game or whatever. But it's lovely to see a romance novel that dips a toe into this because, even if you're just playing Wordle, I mean, God, have you succumbed to this yet?
No, not yet.
I've kept I just know if I get anywhere near Wordle, that's it. That's the day's product, a week's product.
That's exactly my problem. Yeah.
So,
but you were saying that, and it was actually quite hard to find an angle to pitch it, right? Because all of those stereotypes feed into it, and I kept coming up with ways and saying to my agent, how about this? And she was like, no. So eventually what swung it was just like a throwaway comment saying it's a bit like You've Got Mail.
Yes.
And which, it kind of is.
Yeah.
And that kind of fed into the whole rom-com mindset really well. And once we got that pitch, that made a lot more sense to pitch as a romance.
Yeah. That thing of falling in love with someone and not knowing who they are. That's a great great rom-com trope, isn't it? Yeah, because You've Got Mail is a remake of another film, isn't it? The little is it the little shop on the corner or something like that? Because it was two.
Two bookshops. There's a big bookshop, little bookshop. Yeah.
But it's a remake of another older film, which I can't remember. So saying it in this world, are you a big gamer yourself beyond? I mean, folks, if you're watching this on the YouTube channel, Jeev is wearing proper Xbox headphones with a microphone. So clearly you're on World of Warcraft every other minute, are you?
No. I played Tomb Raider back in the 90s.
Excellent.
That's pretty much it. But I have a teenager, and with lockdown, a lot of their friendships have moved online. So she spends a lot of time playing. This is actually her headset. Yeah. And the whole YouTube gamer thing, she used to play Minecraft, and there's this guy called Stampy Longnose who has a kid-friendly Minecraft channel. And Stampy was practically a member of the family for about a year. So I'm exposed to gaming quite a lot, but I don't do gaming myself. So I had to do a bit of research.
So what was that like? What was there anything about the gaming world that lured you in? And is there anything that writers can learn from gaming? Because we talk about the addiction of gaming, and we want people to basically get addicted to our books, don't we? We want them coming back for more. Is there anything you saw in gaming that you thought I can apply that to my writing?
Well, the goal, there's always a very clear goal, right? Right. Especially the quest type things. I'm doing this in order to get this, and I'm doing that in order to get to the next one. Yeah. So that drive is always there. From a writer perspective, I mean, I write contemporary romance and women's fiction. I don't write fantasy, but I got to write a fantasy game. I read a lot of fantasy, or I did when I was a teenager. And so much about carnivorous plants and dragons and all these things. And I had to tone it down a lot after, because my editor was like, too much. But it was great. And there's something very liberating about writing something completely different, even if it's only like intermittent scenes.
Has that given you the bug? Are we going to see a fantasy novel from you soon? I really hope you're going to say yes.
Probably not. I don't know, though. I've got an idea, so you never know.
Come on, do it. I want to read it. Get it out there.
Yes.
Now here's a bit of cheap psychology for you, because Luke in the novel is living a double life as Blaze, who's for some reason his name makes me think of that bit in Dodgeball where he goes Blade, Laser, Blazer. Put that to one side. He's living a double life. Now you're leading a double life, Jeevani. Rhoda, did that help, having two personas? Did that help get into his mindset?
A little bit. The real difficulty with it was making it believable that two people who know each other in real life wouldn't recognize each other online, or especially when they met in cosplay.
Right.
I had to do quite a lot of research onto cosplay, and Jane Lovering's son is very into cosplay, so he was very helpful.
Well, cosplay, I mean, and for listeners who will be going, what the dickens is cosplay? Whenever you go to a science fiction convention or a Comic-Con or whatever, there are people who will dress up as characters from films and comics and games and books. And
they're very convincing.
Really good.
I mean, I've been to a few local cons, because there's quite a few in Hull. And really convincing. Yeah. And sometimes people I've seen, like, I used to work at the university. You see them around campus in their normal clothes, and then you see them at the weekend dressed as, I don't know, the Borg or something. Oh, wow.
I remember the first convention I ever went to. I took my nephew to meet Ray Park, who played Darth Maul. and took my nephew, of course. It wasn't for me. I remember seeing, a woman dressed as a Klingon, and this sort of bored 6-year-old walking around with her. So this is, it just made me laugh. But my ambition as a writer is, it's not the movie on the Netflix series. It's to see someone dress up as one of my characters in cosplay, because I think you've really arrived when that happens. If someone goes to the effort of sewing, then that says something about your place in the cultural pantheon. But
true,
anyway,
I would love that, but it doesn't really happen a lot in the romance
This is why you need to write a fantasy novel.
With costumes.
Exactly. Yeah. Talking about the romance world, and this is something that we talked about on the deep dive with Jane Lovering, which is episode 191, which we'll go into in much more detail then. But I'm always fascinated by the romance genre and reader expectations, because every genre, readers expect a certain thing from their authors, but it seems to me that romance, there seems to be an even higher expectation from the readers. You have little beats like the meet cute, the happy ending, all that kind. How do you meet those expectations and keep the story fresh?
Partly read a lot in the genre, because you can. There's always a little bit of flexibility in each of those things. So writing Playing for Love, I actually had to have 2 meet cutes essentially and 2 storylines. So they had to have one relationship or full relationship on an online game and one full relationship in real life, and they just had to mix up. So that was quite complicated to do, but I essentially plotted it in my head as two rom-com stories, and then just had to mesh them together as I went along.
Right.
How do you do it? I don't know. Mainly practice. It's standard 3-act structure, really, when you really break it down. So yes, you have the thing, you have the obstacle, except the obstacle is the romantic obstacle. And you have the all is lost. Again, it's all is lost in the romantic sense.
Yeah.
And then you have the denouement at the end. The hardest bit is getting that kind of factor at the end where the reader goes, "Oh, that was nice. Let's do another one."
It is really, really tricky. You very kindly gave me feedback on the first Woodville book, The Crowfolk, because there is an element of romance running through those books, and I wanted someone who knew their stuff to have a look and set me straight, which you did. Thank you very much. And for me, it is people. I know most genres feel hard done by. Like, all the crime writers feel they don't get the credit they deserve. All the science fiction writers feel they don't get the credit they deserve. Romance writers, I think there is something in that, though. People assume it's going to be easy, and it's not easy. And having tried to do it myself, it's having a romantic thread, it's really, really hard. Really, really hard. And it's and I think the reason is you love these. I think you love these people so much. You don't want to be that cruel to them. You don't want to, keep them apart. And also, yeah. I've been very lucky. I sort of met my wife when I was, 18, and we've been together, nearly 30 years. So I've not had that roller coaster either. But it's really hard to sort of put them through hell, isn't it?
It is, and also you have to have a convincing change in the people. So when with a romance novel, yes, it is about person meets person, they get together and, and then something happens, pulls them apart. It's all of that, but it's also the thing that makes it work and makes it believable is that both the characters have to grow towards each other. So you have to have 2 character arcs, even if you're writing in one person's perspective. The other person has to lean in towards them, and it has to be a coming together of people, as opposed to just bang, 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 here are your beats.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it convincing, and that's what makes people care.
Yeah. I saw the bookseller the other day, and I saw you retweet this. They were saying that their prediction for the year
is this joy?
Joy, yeah. People are looking for books with joy, and I think this is something.
Where can you find books with?
I think exactly. So if whether you're reading Jeevani or Rhoda, your books are bursting with joy. So is this going to be your year?
I hope so, because the last 2 years have been a bit. So yeah, for everyone, frankly. So yeah, I hope so. We'll see.
But again,
and it's going so well so far. It's got quite a lot of reviews on NetGalley, which
yes, no, and very, very positive stuff as well. But I think, again, joy is something that's hard to write. It's kind of easy to be miserable. It's easy to, tear people apart and wallow in misery with your writing. But it's quite difficult to write something that's positive without getting too twee, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, it is. We're all somehow programmed to be fairly cynical about happiness. Like we don't deserve it. And we do deserve it. And you can be happy. And I mean, I write uplifting books because that's what we need. And we read to be somewhere else, to be someone else, and to experience things. And so, yeah, why not experience happy things?
Excellent stuff. I just want to circle back to something that you mentioned at the very beginning, and it's in your bio as well. I'm just going to read this out from your bio. And this is a bit less happy, but this is the first book I wrote was about a bunch of middle-class Sri Lankan people. I couldn't find a home for it, even though I got some very nice rejection notes. The next book I wrote was a rom-com with white main characters in it. That found a publisher within a year. I mean, we've discussed this quite a few times. Publishing is very white, it's very middle class. You had to essentially become Rhoda in order to get published. Do you see change? Do you see things getting better, or is it? I mean, seems very slow to me. But what's your perspective on this?
I think it is changing. I think publishing is, well, at least for now, because we just don't know. At least for now, they're trying to recruit more broadly as well, which is going to be, I think, the main driving force. Because if you are used to only seeing the one thing, it's very hard to relate to something that you've not seen before. So I was talking about writing middle-class Sri Lankan people. And if you only experience Asian people, because in this specific case, Asian people from books, then the only stories you see are about racism. They're about the immigrant struggle, and they're often literary fiction. So it's almost like saying, these are the stories that these people have. Those are the only stories they can have.
Right.
And, like I say, I'm middle class, educated, have a decent job, eat cornflakes for breakfast. And I write rom-coms, and I wanted to see people like me. And I think it became more important after I had children. I wanted my children to be able to see people like themselves. So for Playing for Love, what happened was I had a convenient marriage, which got shortlisted for awards and things. That was that very old first book. And an editor read it. And then she messaged me through my website to say, hi, I've got Sri Lankan ancestry. And I read this book and I noticed you write rom-coms and I love rom-coms. Would you be able to write me a rom-com where one of the main characters is Sri Lankan, right? And my first thought was, finally, because all of my novellas that I self-publish as Rhoda Baxter, I self-published them because I didn't think anybody would take them. And they have Sri Lankan, either a hero or a heroine in there. But yeah, my second thought was, hang on a minute, is this like, I'm a Nigerian prince, send me loads of money. So I said, editors don't just email you out of the blue like that, surely. So I sent it to my agent and I was like, I got this. Is this for real? So she checked it out. She was like, no, it sounds like it's for real. So we had a conversation and I pitched her everything I had. And she liked this one. So
Wonderful stuff. Well, this is great. It's folks, if you need to follow Rhoda Jeev on social media because it's so much fun. You're constantly putting positive waves out there. the website is amazing because you do things like offer downloadable book club questions for your books. They're press kits. You're doing everything right. I think you're pushing everything in the right direction, and you are, such a great positive force and such an inspiration to people. So let's get you back on the show again pretty soon. Let's go for a record and take it from there. But Jeev, best of luck with Playing for Love, and really looking forward to speaking to you again soon.
Thank you. It comes out in February, so soon.
Excellent stuff.
All right.
What are your writing dreams? Finishing that book, quitting the day job, becoming a best-selling author? Well, over 4 years, we've studied the advice of over 300 best-selling authors who've collectively sold over 500 million books. And we are excited to announce the Bestseller Academy. If you're ready to take your writing to the next level with accountability, craft, and coaching, your bestseller dreams are now only a click away. To find out more and apply, visit bestsellerexperiment.com/academy. That's bestsellerexperiment.com/academy. Do you know, it's so nice, Mark, to know that I'm not the only parent who has kids that love that show, Miraculous Ladybug. Did you ever hear of it before? Have you come across it?
Not at all. And after Jeev mentioned it, I looked it up on YouTube, and it's very sweet and very adorable. Not my thing, no. But my kids are too old now. But I can see why.
Well, my 19-year-old still isn't too old, because she was texting my now 13-year-old saying there's a new season on Netflix. It's something that is funny. It's that show has been a mainstay in our family for probably it's been going for quite a while now, 4 or 5 years. But it's so funny because it's like Jeevani explained, like there's these two superheroes, and they're basically the same characters, like just dressed up as superheroes. But in real life, when they're just going about their day job, they look exactly the same, just without the mask and the cape. Yet they can't work out that they're super. It's hilarious, but it's really well done. But it's interesting to see how Jeevani used it.
Yeah, and just to say, because we mentioned You've Got Mail, and You've Got Mail is a remake of The Shop Around the Corner, which was made in 1940 and remade again in 1949 as a film called Good Old Summertime. And before that, it was a Hungarian play called Perfumery. So thank you, Wikipedia, for that. Wow. So it is a concept. It's a concept that the idea that people fall in love either via letters in the old-fashioned one, or via words on a page, or online, or through gaming or whatever, via these alternative personalities that we take on when we put words on a page or play games or whatever. And then in the real life, they kind of despise each other. It seems to be a concept that's got a lot of legs.
Yeah, really, really good. You also mentioned about Wordle, Mr. Stain. You said that you've not succumbed. No,
I feel like and every day I see another writer fall to Wordle, and I feel like the 1970 Philip Kaufman Invasion of the Body Snatchers, where at the end, I feel like I'm the last survivor, and I see Donald Sutherland and he hasn't been got yet, and then he turns and goes, whoa! I feel like that. I feel like I'm the last writer on the planet who's not doing Wordle. But I do have a word game on my phone which I play first thing in the morning. It is a nice way to get the thing in my head,
the thing in your head.
The thing in my head that makes thoughts work, it gets that working. And so that's happy for me. But no, Wordle, I'm not going anywhere near it. Yeah.
I succumbed, Mark. I succumbed many weeks ago.
Oh, did you?
I did, yeah. Well, I love crosswords. Crosswords are my thing. I used to do crosswords kind of as a late teen. Loved it. And then didn't do crosswords for many years. And then found actually during lockdown, we found that you could share a crossword. So I do a crossword every night, and we do it together. It's like you can see the screen, you both type on, and it's loads of fun. And I like to do crosswords because it does. I do think it kind of helps to kind of keep things going. But when I saw Wordle, oh man, absolutely so addictive. But I read this morning, actually, before we came on air, this brilliant story about an old lady that was doing Wordle with her daughter, and they're on opposite sides. One was in Seattle, and one I think was over the other side of the US. And one evening, the daughter got concerned because the mother hadn't sent her Wordle share. You can basically show what had happened. So she actually ended up ringing up the police and saying, I'm a little bit concerned. My mum hasn't been in communication today. She hasn't sent me her Wordle. Anyway, they went on a well-being call, as they call it. They checked out, found that she had been kidnapped and locked in her locked in her basement by some guy who entered her house naked with a pair of scissors. Like, you can't make this stuff up. Seriously. Forced her to have a bath in her nightie.
Oh my God.
I know, really weird. And then lock her up in the basement. And the police walk in and find this guy who's now obviously under arrest. But all because of Wordle. This lovely old lady's life has been saved. I
shouldn't laugh, but
no, but I mean, isn't it just bonkers? Absolutely bonkers. Wow. The other thing, though, I have to say, the chap who invented Wordle, he sold it to the New York Times.
Yeah.
And when I read that, my heart sank. Because I thought, I mean, good on him. I mean, absolutely brilliant. Like, what he made it, I think, about 5 months ago or something, and sold it for low millions, as they
made it for his wife, didn't he?
But I really hope that he had at least a couple of other companies make some bids, because I was thinking of publishers. You know how often we talk about this. You get your first offer come in for your book and you're so excited. You're like, where do I sign? I thought, this Wordle's got like, I think 3 million users and it's growing exponentially. I just have a sense he may have sold it a little bit too low. But anyway, to everyone who's a fellow Wordle nut, of which I know there's many of them. I think the big debate to have, though, about these games is Wordle better from a writer's perspective as a word game than Crosswords? And I'm going to say I still think Crosswords are better, because Crosswords force you to come up with a word that describes something else, whereas Wordle is more of a kind of an anagram, like fill in the blanks and deduce what word it is. But
it's Mastermind. Do you remember that board game Mastermind?
I do, and we played it recently. We got it out because of Wordle. Yeah,
which has nothing to do with the quiz show Mastermind, which really confused me as a kid.
It is confusing. Like, who was that old guy?
The old guy with the beard
and the really young lady in her dress. What was going on there?
No idea. Really, he's like a Bond villain or something.
He was.
He's like, Mr. Bond, I have some coloured pegs which I want you to identify.
You must save the world if you.
Blofeld, you're cunning.
Didn't he have a really triangular beard? Or am I...
What, like a Van Dyke beard?
Like a Van Dyke beard, absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh. Mastermind was a big hit. I think we talked about Mastermind at Christmas, didn't we?
I think we did. We've probably done the same gags all over again.
But there's also I don't know if you've seen it, but there's a game show from the 80s. I think it might be Canadian even. I can't remember the name of it now, but people would be screaming it. But it's quite Wordle-esque, actually. It was a game show. We had to kind of like guess letters, and it filled in, and it was, instead of having like 5 letters, it had like a phrase, and then you had to shout it out before the other people got it. But yeah, it's but absolutely what I love about
the thing I'm enjoying most about Wordle is the English UK-based authors who get infuriated when they come across US spellings,
like last night,
because that's the whole Twitter feed for the whole morning. Is people go, oh, that's not how it's spelled.
I know.
So and you've only got yourselves to blame.
Well, yesterday's one was it was the first one I couldn't do, and it was all because of a US spelling. I mean, honestly, really. I mean, I shouldn't be complaining. I live in North America, but Canadians spell things more like the Brits, I think, generally. But here's the thing that I love, though. For anyone writing a book thinking, every idea is being done to death. But you then stand back, you think it's 2022 and someone comes up with this game called Wordle and everyone's like, wow, this is new and it's brilliant. The same applies to books. Like, there's always a different take. Yeah, it's a word game, but there's always a different slight angle on things. So never feel down that everything's been used. You can always have your own take on something, and Wordle's proof of that. So yeah, fantastic. I'm sure we're going to get Wordle threads on social media now. But anyway, apart from that, I want to tell you a quick story about when I listen to the podcast as I'm driving sometimes before, or the interview prior to the podcast. And I like to use Siri just to make notes about some of the things we're going to talk about that the author's spoken about, which kind of like piqued my interest. And this morning I looked at my notes, Mark, and it was great. I had Miraculous, I had Wordle, and then I had something that said gagging sweet. Couldn't for the life of me work out what that was.
No, listeners don't know that we spent 10 minutes before the recording trying to figure out what this was.
Exactly. And actually, what it, with Siri, you know what it's like. You say something and it hears something else, especially my English accent. But actually, what I wanted to talk about was something called the gaming sweet spot, not gagging sweet.
Yes.
Right. So, but I thought it was really interesting that Jeevani was talking about. I mean, we obviously talked a lot about gaming, but there is actually so many similarities to gaming and writing. There's lots of, and there is this thing in gaming called the sweet spot, which is where each level that you complete, the developer is trying to find the sweet spot of making something hard enough to be a challenge, but not too hard that you give up. And I was thinking about how we could apply that to writing as a plot line, like making it intriguing enough to keep people like reading, but not too convoluted or complex that people just like, oh, I can't work out what's going on here. And gaming has really nailed this because they can measure it in millions of players all playing at the same time with real-time information coming in about how long it's taken them to complete a level, because all these apps are like, they're all connected to the data, the servers of the gaming, whereas we can't do that in books. Do you know how brilliant it would be, Mark, if we could have an ability to, with beta readers, for example, to see real time at what point they stop reading our book, or how long it took them to start reading again?
Well, that'd
be cool.
It's something I try. In some ways, you can. Because if you leave notes in a Word doc or a Scrivener doc or a Google doc or whatever, there's usually a timestamp. So if you want to get down to that kind of detail, you can. Because I notice when I get edits back from my editor, I can look through and say, okay, they read you say it'll be this comment was made on Monday at noon, and then there'll be a whole bunch of Monday notes, and then it's Tuesday notes, and then you kind of think, oh, okay, it took them 4 days to read this, and they worked in sort of 3-hour blocks or whatever. But the other thing I do is, if someone gives me a book for feedback for an edit or a reader's report or whatever, I will sort of put almost real-time comments and say, okay, this bumped me out of the story. And then when there's an explanation 2 chapters later, I will circle back to that and go, okay, this confused me. It made sense 2 chapters from now, but maybe you need to go back and just add something in here so the reader doesn't get bumped out of the story. So I do that, and I appreciate that when editors and beta readers do that to me. So you can kind of do something, obviously not to the microscopic detail that gamers are doing. And I imagine as well that the likes of Kindle and Apple have all kinds of data about when people give up on a book and put it, and do not finish and all that kind of stuff.
That's never fed back to the author, though, right? I mean, that would be so useful, wouldn't it? In our because if you could get a report that would pinpoint to you, look, you've got a major problem in chapter 6 because 50% of people have dropped out and they never kept reading, and you could go back and tweak that like they do in the gaming industry, tweak the sweet spot, and then see if it changes. Like, oh, suddenly people are getting through chapter 6, and then because you just never know, and it's I'd love to think that as authors one day we'll be able to get that level of information, because it can only help us. And when it's statistically based rather than qualitatively based by, say, 20 beta readers who might all say, oh yeah, there's something funny about this chapter. But if you can actually see a stat, I'm all about the numbers, as you know, but if you can see a figure, I mean, it would be pretty conclusive evidence, wouldn't it? But so yeah, it'd be interesting to see if someone one day develops something like that. I think it could be very, very useful.
It's similar to the kind of feedback you sometimes get with because with feedback from TV shows from test screenings,
test groups, and
that kind of thing, and they do have very, very detailed forms that you fill out, but also my only experience of this is an episode of The Simpsons called the Itchy, Scratchy and Poochie Show, where they have the kids, and I'm sure this happens in real life, where they have the kids, turning a dial, I'm engaged, I'm bored, I'm engaged, I'm bored, that kind of thing. So I'm sure a lot of that testing goes on with TV, where they have the budget to do it, where they have the resources to do it. But obviously, when you're talking about 80, 90, 100,000 words in a novel, it's so much more difficult to quantify.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? It is. Now, I want to ask you, Mark, about the dream declaration that you announced inadvertently during the chat. This is brilliant. This is something I've never heard before, and yet it makes so much sense. It makes so much sense. Cosplay.
Yeah.
An ambition to see somebody dress up as a character that you've created in cosplay. That's a brilliant dream declaration right there.
It's something, I can't remember where I heard it. I heard someone say, if you can identify your characters in silhouette, then there's something about those characters that becomes iconic. And certainly in The Witches of Woodville, the third book, two of the characters appear sort of out of the gloom, and I describe their shape. And I would hope that by the time we get to the third book, the reader goes, oh, that's that character and that character. I kind of hope that they identify them. And similarly in Unwelcome, the character played by Hannah John Carmen, right? So she's pregnant. She's got this beautiful yellow dress and a big belly. And there's a part of me desperately hoping that at some Comic-Con or Fright Fest or something like that, I'm going to see women dressing up, at least pregnant women, or putting a fake bump and pretending to be her, because she has the DMs and she's got this lovely yellow dress and, she's got kind of a fist bunch as well. So it's this thing that I'm very conscious of now when I write it in the script or in the character description. I want it to be kind of iconic and something that the costume has always been a bit of a blind spot for me, but it's something I've become a lot more aware of in the last couple of years. Yeah,
I think it's great. I think it's great detail. I mean, you just go back to like the Lord of the Rings screenings and the Harry Potter screenings, and you think about the cinemas absolutely filled with like dress up. And I've never actually been to a Comic-Con convention or a cosplay convention, but I've seen videos on YouTube and the like, and it does look absolutely spectacular. It looks like so much fun.
Oh, mate, you're in for a treat. What you need to do is do what Claire did when she came to first time she came to a Comic-Con with me, and get slightly drunk. And she was like, oh, look at him! Oh, is it? Oh, look at you! Look just like that thing. So yeah, that will enhance your enjoyment of it. But yeah, going back to Harry Potter. I mean, you think of that. All you need with Harry Potter is the lightning on the forehead and the glasses. And instantly you know who that character is. And that's the genius of that. When you think of Bond, it's the tuxedo and the gun, the arm folded and the tuxedo. Mm-hmm. The face is blank, but just that pose and everything, you know exactly who it is. So it's even something like the Beatles, if you have four men crossing a zebra crossing, you know who, in silhouette, you know who those people are.
Yeah, exactly. Do you know what it is? I think that, I mean, we know that kids love to dress up. I mean, it's probably one of the memories of childhood. I think the dress up box, but people forget that we're really just big kids. We love an excuse to dress up. Like who doesn't? Who dreads going to a fancy dress party, but actually has the best time of their life by the end of it, right? I must say though, one of my favorite experiences of dressing up was when I was doing kind of festivals. There was this great festival called the Secret Garden Party, and it was kind of more of a small, like 5,000 people. It was a boutique festival, they call it, but it was so brilliant. It was in this amazing grounds, and it had this big lake. And I remember DJing in a pagoda over this lake, and they'd put out a dance floor on the water, built out of those things that military vehicles go over when they stack. Yeah, that was the dance floor. Sunset. I mean, playing this dance music, it was brilliant. But one of the best things about that festival is they had two campsites. They had the campsite really close to the main festival area, and then the campsite that that was a real walk away. And if anyone's ever been to a big festival, you know, like with Glastonbury, for example, you sometimes have to walk like half an hour to get from one side to the other. It's like proper trek. But what they did is they said anyone who comes to the festival in fancy dress has the VIP campsite nearby. So
nice.
So as a result, so many people came as fancy dress, and it just changed the whole atmosphere of the whole weekend, because like literally more than half the people were dressed up. And it's absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. So you're absolutely right to think about like, what can you use for your character to create something iconic, something in addition to just another character wearing a suit and tie or a dress? Or
the last time I dressed up was for secret cinema. You know, this phenomenon of secret cinema where you sort
tell me.
This was the Blade Runner one. Okay.
Right.
So you sign up to Secret Cinema and they create the world of the film in a secret location. And they've done things. They did a Back to the Future one. They did a Star Wars one, which I missed, bizarrely. They've done Romeo and Juliet, Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet, I think. And then they did a Blade Runner one. And a bunch of Galant's people went. This was when I was still at Orion. And so you sign up and you're given a character name and a few details. Here's a weird coincidence. My character was called Nathaniel Woodville. So go figure. Okay.
Random.
And I was already writing the books by then. Yeah. And, you know, you had to sort your own costume. So I'm a huge Blade Runner fan. And I was this denizen of the streets. I wasn't one of the cool ones. I was just some lowlife. So I put together a costume and I really got into it. It was the first proper immersive acting I'd done since I was running a theatre company, and I really got in character. I kept the accent the whole night, everything. It was like, and then afterwards you step out and you're on the tube, and it was like stepping out of a dream. It was, if you ever get a chance to do secret cinema, do it, because you have to create a character, you build a character up, and random people who are employed by secret cinema, like actors, will stop. I was interrogated. They're asking me questions of, you went to this place, we saw you in this place, what did you see? And I had to improvise and think on the spot.
Wow.
And it was brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
Do you actually
really,
watch the film as well, or is it just literally show up in a set?
You watch, so you show up on the set and there's like 2 hours of interactivity, and then you watch the film. The film was ironically the worst. It was really badly projected and the sound was terrible. And I'm sitting there thinking, I've got the Blu-ray at home, sod this, I'm going. So I left. I had a long journey home as well. It's not long after we moved here. But yeah, it's pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing.
Love it. Absolutely love it. Now, one of the other things that Jeevani, big theme, obviously, throughout the time that you've interviewed her a number of times, is just the joy that comes out of her writing. I think it's such a lovely thing, isn't it? Because you think of writing as being, we talk about in the podcast about being such a hard thing to do, and yet Jeevani finds the joy in it.
Well, yeah, and also there was this article a couple of weeks ago, and take this with as big a pinch of salt as you want, but the bookseller said, literary agents are predicting joy will be a dominant theme among submissions in 2022, with cozy crime continuing and renewed fervor for historical fiction and vampires. So, go figure. I mean, it's one of these things where if you start writing it now, your joy book now, the trend will have moved on. There'll be something else happening. But if you've got something joyful, then you might be in luck. But who knows? Do
you know what it is, though? It's just the opposite of whatever's happening out in society. That's what the book world references. Like, if everyone's down and like COVID's been really challenging, and everyone's like, oh, right, what do we need? We need the antidote, right? So in books, we're now going to have joy, and so and if everything's going great in the world and we're in, everything's going smoothly, then obviously we need more horror or more terror. Right? Yeah. But yeah, I think that's how it works, isn't it? So if you can predict where the world will be next year, write the opposite. I guess.
Very rich man. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That's brilliant. But it is good to remember that it's like, I know writing can have its challenges, but you've got to at the end of the day, you've got to get more joy out of it.
Yeah.
Ultimately. And I know a lot of joy comes from finishing a book and seeing how the book can succeed, and the joy you get from readers telling you how much they loved it. I mean, that's a lot of the payback, isn't it? It happens after the writing. But like, what if we changed our mindset and we thought, I've got my 200 words to write today. I'm going to really enjoy this. I'm going to actually like sit down and change my attitude from being, oh, this is so hard, I can't get through this, but to like, just relax and enjoy the process a bit more. And maybe that will lighten things up a bit.
That's exactly it. Even the hard bit, enjoy the hard bits, because it's for me, storytelling is about problem solving. It's figuring out how people tick, how they work, and how they would react in situations. So has a lot in common with Crosswords, which is why I think Wordle is popular with writers, that kind of problem solving kind of thing.
Yeah, you nailed it. The funny thing is, I look at my kids playing video games, and they will quite happily dedicate, if I let them, 15 hours a day to working hard solving video games. And Crosswords, again, it's like it's taxing, it's challenging, and yet because it's seen a Wordle, because it's seen as a game, it's fun.
Yeah.
So what if we switched writing from it's a challenge, but it's fun, as opposed to it's a challenge and it's an absolute nightmare to write. Hard work.
That's how I see it. That is exactly how I see it. I've had if you follow my hashtag 200 words a day, if you follow me every day on Twitter. So today I wrote something like 397 mediocre words. Today was not a good writing day, so I put that on Twitter. But funnily enough, those mediocre words, I've been thinking, how can I improve that? And just before we started recording, I wrote something in my notebook to spark me off tomorrow, because actually it's taken me 9 hours, but I figured out what I need to do tomorrow that's going to make it work.
Brilliant. So it all has a purpose at the end of the day. It's fantastic. Yeah. Brilliant stuff.
Yeah.
Now, before we dive into social media, Mark, I want to tell you this really brilliant story.
Yes, tell me.
Okay. So there's an 8-year-old boy in Idaho, and his name's Dylan Helbig, Helbig, and he wrote his own book called The Adventures of Dylan Helbig's Christmas and I love this, by Dylan himself. And I'm gonna show you a picture. Actually, maybe we could put this on. I'll just share my screen quickly. But what he basically did is he wrote this and he put some serious effort into it. And he decided that he was basically going to slip it into his bookshelf on the library, in his local library. Look at these pictures. Look, he created little Christmas pictures, and he's got chapter to the North
Pole.
Right?
Fantastic.
And look at this picture of swirling like something that I landed in his stomach. Anyway,
wow.
So he slid it in. He slid it into his local library without anyone knowing or looking. Not even his parents knew he'd done it. And then one of the librarians found it, and they pulled it off the shelf, and they had a look at it, and they started reading it. And they absolutely loved it. And they passed it around the library to all the librarians. And they said, you know what, this is brilliant. And anyway, it turns out that they actually have put an official barcode on it. Oh. And it now has, and this is the best bit, it now has a year waiting list to take it out of the library. Isn't that the best story ever?
That is brilliant. Dylan, we salute you, young man. That is fantastic.
And the best bit is they actually invented a new award at the library called the Houdini Award, this little owl with glasses, called the Best Young Novelist 2021. And Dylan was the first recipient of it. And I just think that's such a lovely story that, and he had one copy in this little hardback book, little notepad where he'd drawn it, and he wanted to put it on the shelf.
That is brilliant. How old is he? 9 years old? 8 years old?
8 years old. 8 years old.
Now, just a warning to adult authors. If you try that in your local library, the librarian will take A to M of the nearest encyclopedia and beat you over the head with it. So don't try that. If you can only get away with this if you're young and adorable. So don't try that if you're grown up.
Absolutely love it. And they're now talking to him, apparently, because of the long waiting list. It says they're talking with Dylan's mum about possibly creating an ebook version of The Adventures of Dylan Helbig's Christmas, CRISMIS, to share
Fantastic.
As well. But I just love it. 55 people are in the waiting list to get that book out. So well done, Dylan. I think that's brilliant. And
that's
who knows
fantastic.
where his career is going to blossom from here.
Yeah.
Nothing like a bit of initiative in our youngsters. Brilliant stuff.
Fantastic.
So talking about other success stories, Mark, here it's been quite the successes on social media this week.
Well, we got some wonderful news here, and we got something from Matt Anathasiou. And Matt, I apologise for the number of times I've mangled your surname as a member of the Academy or as a listener of the show. But Matt has he said, I've been meaning to share that I received my contributor's copy of Crow Toe's quarterly magazine with my children's horror poem, The Marmagar. Lots of beautifully terrifying art and stories inside. So huge congrats to you, Matt. Matt, of course, one of the first members of the Academy.
He was,
the Bestseller Academy, and he's getting his stories out there, which is just fantastic. So
brilliant.
Congrats on that, Matt. Mike Shackle. Now, you'll know Mike has been on the show a couple of times, and I'm going to be getting Mike on again because Matt posted on Facebook, he said, everyone knows I started writing We Are the Dead, which is his fantasy series, The Last War. We Are the Dead is the first book in the Last War series. He says, everyone knows I started writing We Are the Dead after listening to the Bestseller Experiment right back at the beginning. Well, here we are, the page proofs to book 3. All 800 pages of them. After this, my time with these characters is over. I feel quite emotional. And his book is Until the Last, which feels like such an appropriate title for the last part of a trilogy. Until the Last, book 3 of The Last War, Mike Shackle. Well, Mike, it's all weirdly come full circle. So I want to get Mike back on when Until the Last is published later in the year to talk about that whole journey and the ups and downs. And, so congrats, Mike. Huge congrats.
I love it. And I love that Mike's kept us so kind of like he's kept us every stage along the way of this journey. It's been so great documenting every stage, Mike, and we absolutely salute you for keeping everyone else going and inspired by your successes.
Now, every week on the Academy and in the Bestseller Experiment group on Facebook, we have a little Sunday roundup where we say, okay, what have you been up to this week? Have you banked any words? What are your successes? Blah, blah, blah. And everyone comes in, I've written this, I've done that, or I'm struggling with this. How, it's all, all very honest and open. Craig Anderson, again, one of our longest serving listeners, Craig Anderson said, had kidney stone surgery this week, which slowed me down a tad. Just over 9,000 words, hoping to pick up the pace again this week.
Oh my gosh. That is bonkers.
I haven't had any surgery. I've had a few kidney stones. It is agony. And I basically curl into a ball and whimper for about a week. I certainly don't get 9,000 words down. So, Craig, you are, that's incredible.
Superhuman.
But look after yourself, Craig. Look after yourself. Don't overdo it, mate.
Brilliant.
The wonderful Lorna Cook, who, again, long-time member of the BXP group on Facebook. Her new book, The Dressmaker's Secret, is now out, and there's a lovely video of her online doing a little happy dance with that. And you'll find that in supermarkets across the UK, The Dressmaker's Secret. So grab your copy now and check that out. And then last, but by no means least, so we've got Tracy Montague, who writes as Trey Montague, and she posted this. She said, announcing the New Beginnings Poetry Competition winner. And this is from the Curtis Brown Creative people. They said, we're delighted to announce the winner of the New Beginnings Poetry Competition, selected by the CBC team and award-winning poet Anthony there's another surname I'm going to mangle. Apologies to Anthony Anaxagorou from the over 500 budding poets that submitted their powerful poems in response to the theme New Beginnings. The winner of the prize is Trey Montague with her poem Mantra. Trey has been awarded £500 and a free place on their course. So, Trey, huge congrats for that. I'm going to post a link to the poem in the show notes because it's really powerful stuff, really powerful stuff. And I won't read it, first of all, copyright reasons, but also it's from a women's point of view, and I think it's the voice really comes across on the page. So Trey, huge congrats on that. And this is just the beginning, I think.
I know. I remember Trey dropped me a note actually at the weekend to let me know what happened. I was just over the moon. Absolutely incredible work. And What I mean, that's rocket. That's got rocket in your fuel tank, isn't it? Really, when things like that happen, absolutely brilliant. But so well deserved, because I know Trey's been working away at the craft for a long time, and brilliant news, Trey. Congratulations.
So, folks, get in touch with us at bestsellerexperiment.com. You'll find a contact tab there, or you can find us on social media. Facebook is Bestseller Experiment. Twitter and Instagram is at BestsellerXP. And if you've enjoyed today's show, if you've gleaned some little bit of writing wisdom, if you think there's a writer friend of yours that will get something from it, then share this far and wide. Tell your friends, tell your writing groups, give us a rating on your podcast provider, because those things really do make us more visible. They help us reach out to writers who, maybe think, oh, that first draft, oh, no one's going to listen to me, no one wants to hear what I've got to say. Well, we do, they do, the world does. Get involved.
Absolutely. And if you would like to get the daily writing habit, join us in the 200wordchallenge.com. That's 200wordchallenge.com. The aim is to just write simply 200 words a day, and you will have a finished book by the end of 12 months. So drop us a note if you're doing that. If you're finding it's helped, actually let us know, and we'll kind of cheer you along as you go. But do get involved with that. And if you'd like to support this podcast, if you find this podcast helps you, keeps you going, then please do support the podcast by popping along to bestsellerexperiment.com/support. And finally, if you would like to join us, as Mark said earlier, in the Academy, we join us for coaching sessions twice a month, loads of courses we've got online, and all kinds of incredible material that you will not find anywhere else. Pop along to academy.bestsellerexperiment.com.
Catches me every time.
Yeah, and I'd love to see you. I'd love to see you there. We look forward. If you've got any questions, just drop me a note there.
I just want to say, in a few weeks' time, we have a guest on the show who is a Patreon supporter who has sold their book at auction and it's being published internationally. I'm not saying the two things are directly connected, but it can't hurt, can it? You don't know until you try.
This could be massive as well, folks. I can't wait to hear more about it. But we've got some really, really big breakout authors coming through this year. So watch this space, folks. Anyway, Mr. Stay, all that leaves me is to have a very, very good week. Enjoy your writing. I hope you have another good roller coaster, more of the highs.
Lots of screaming.
As long as you're screaming, then you're having fun, really. And always make sure you just sit at the front of the roller coaster for obvious reasons. That's all I'll say. But everyone, have a fantastic writing week. Get those 200 words a day down, and we look forward to chatting with you all next week. And so it's a goodbye from Mark 1.
And a goodbye from Mark 2. Goodbye.
Goodbye.